that is working. Nurse educator from New Hampshire. So we are live streaming it there because we have a new Zoom account, which has only 100 people. And so we're just trying to make sure. Great. Looks like it is live on YouTube. So for those people who need that, but I think we're a small enough group that we're not quite at capacity yet. But all right. Well, welcome everybody. Let me start the recording and make sure we don't. So welcome to a Synapse Care community call / small baby Q&A / just major update from Barbara Rourke, who's going to tell us all about her Milk Drops project and the new publication that's coming out, and just give us all a little bit of an update on all of the exciting things that she is doing. And so, like I said, she wasn't feeling so good, so she recorded us a video so that we would be sure to hear everything she has to say, but her voice sounds amazing. She's all perky and ready to answer all your questions. The video runs for about 15 minutes. So that's her presentation part. So type your questions in the chat and then we'll have time to just be answering questions for the rest of the time together. So hope that sounds like an okay agenda to all of you. Keep typing in the chat where you're from, what your role is. The big question is who all's coming to the Newborn Brain Society meeting happening here in another couple weeks. So that's happening in Tampa, and I think you can still register if you haven't. I bought my flight yesterday, was not too expensive. So don't let that scare you away if you have a couple days off and you want to go to that. But without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and bring up Barb's presentation, and we'll do that. It's going to start playing immediately, so I need to have it ready, and all of that. So again, welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here, and I am going to make sure all of this is set and ready. Let me share my screen and share sound, and we should be good to go. All right, so enjoy this presentation by Barb, and we'll be back in just a few minutes for some live Q&A.
The Neuroprotection of Oral Enjoyment by Offering Milk Drops. My name is Barbara Rourke, and I'm a clinical staff and research nurse at the NICU at Blank Children's Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. I am so grateful to Kathy for this opportunity to again talk about the Milk Drops study. Many of you may not know about this study, so I hope you don't mind if I go over our objectives and history so you have a better understanding of this research. Our learner objective is to describe why premature infants are at higher risk of feeding problems. Let me tell you how one infant and one moment changed the way we care for our premature babies. One night, I was assigned to take care of a 27-week infant named Lily. Lily was a rowdy preemie, and as I nested her in, I placed a drop of her mother's milk on her lips. Lily seemed to smile as she pulled her little hands closer to her face and began to suck stronger on her pacifier. I did not take care of Lily again until the night before her scheduled G-tube, now at 42 weeks. She had become severely aversive. However, there didn't seem to be a reason. No reflux, no vocal cord paralysis, no milk allergies, no aspiration, nothing. Now, 15 weeks later, as I again placed a drop of breast milk on Lily's lips, the response was so different. Instead of the ecstasy of the smell and taste of her mother's milk, Lily now puckered her lips and pulled her head back. The space of time from that first encounter made this such a stark contrast. This was that moment. What happened? The concern of oral aversion and the inability of many of our micropreemies to take full oral feedings at 40 to 44 weeks led us to conduct a literature search. We found research that discussed how invasive oral procedures required for routine NICU care may have a negative impact on oral sensory and oral motor function. Many studies described how the transition from gavage feedings is often challenging. Other studies discuss the risk and predictors of oral feeding progression. There was evidence that giving oral colostrum drops was safe and resulted in a positive immune response in premature infants. However, we did not find any research about giving milk drops solely for the purpose of oral enjoyment. Therefore, a trial study with 5 premature infants less than 30 weeks was completed with parental consent. The results and rationale of the trial were presented to this institution's IRB, who approved the research project of offering milk drops to our NICU infants with gavage feedings. Our medical team requested that the project focus on 24 to 33 plus 6-week gestational age infants. Our purpose or hypothesis was simple: to determine whether offering oral milk drops with gavage feedings for oral enjoyment would decrease length of stay for premature infants. So let's briefly go over the rationale. Before I was born, I used all of my senses. I would taste and swallow the amniotic fluid. This fluid has the scent of my mother. I would touch my face and my mother holds me. I could see light, and I usually fall asleep as I listened to my mother's heartbeat. Suddenly, everything changed. Strong smells, bright lights, my skin is dry. I feel so weak. Where are my hands? My mouth is a war zone. Tubes, suction, oral care. I miss my mother, her touch, her scent, her taste, her sounds. The very low birth weight infant has a survival rate greater than 85%. An estimated 50 to 70% of these infants will have later dysfunction. 80% of premature infants will have difficulty with feeding. The increased risk is because from 23 to 32 weeks gestation, the premature brain is developing rapidly into neural networks that depend on molecular cues and activity. The more frequently a neural connection is stimulated, whether good or bad, the more likely it will become permanent. In other words, if the infant receives more negative oral experiences than positive, the negative may become dominant, which may affect the infant's ability and desire to eat. Neuroprotection of these infants is so important. We start by turning down the lights, decreasing the activity, decreasing the noise. We provide nutrition from admission to discharge, which is so critical for brain growth. And developmentally, we give the infants boundaries for comfort, security, and flexion. Isolates to protect their sleep, pacifiers for non-nutritive sucking, and time to be loved by their parents, skin to skin. However, even with all these pieces in place, is there still a piece missing to this puzzle? It is important to understand that safe and effective oral feeding depends on development, maturity, and coordination. So for most premature infants, they will not be offered oral feedings until 32 to 34 weeks. For the infant who is born at 23 weeks, that is 9 to 11 weeks of taping, suctioning, tubes, and oral care, and very little oral enjoyment during the most critical time of structural differentiation of the brain. What we do know is that neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change because of experience, and all experience is filtered through the senses. Now, how can we harness this knowledge? By doing what we already do, but adding an enjoyable oral component. We will do it with cares and gavage feedings to provide a multisensory, enjoyable oral experience. So first we will get you ready. After all cares are completed, we will place you on your side. This encourages midline awareness. It takes less energy and it is easier to breathe on your side. And this position will be familiar when you begin to nurse or bottle. We will give you boundaries for comfort, security, and flexion. We will place your parent's scent heart near your face, and we will place your hands by your face to help you organize yourself and encourage self-comforting. So let's talk about the milk drop intervention itself. The first thing we're going to do is place a drop or two of milk on your lips. As you lick the milk, we will offer you a swab or pacifier. At this point, you become a participant. If you accept the pacifier by opening your mouth, We will give you more milk, a drop at a time, as you suck on your pacifier or swab. However, if you lick the milk but refuse the swab or pacifier, we will remove the swab or pacifier and just let you lick milk a drop at a time. However, if you don't respond, we will let you rest. You still have had a positive oral experience, and you will have an opportunity at your next feeding. We created an algorithm to kind of go over what the process is. And so we're just going to run through it really quick. We always start out the same. Caregiving is complete. The infant's on his side. The scent cloth is by their face and their hands are to their face. Time to enjoy. We always place a drop or two of milk on the infant's lips. There are two ways the infant could respond. They might lick their lips or they might not. Either way, we're going to offer the swab or pacifier. From this point, there are three ways the infant could respond. The infant could accept the swab or pacifier, and at that point, we would just continue to give drops of milk on the pacifier or swab and just let the infant guide us. However, another way the infant might respond, as we talked about, is they could refuse. They could thrust their tongue and just refuse the swab or pacifier. These are the infants that this is probably the most important to how to respond. You need to take the swab or pacifier away and then allow the infant to just lick milk. Most of these infants will continue to lick milk, and so important. Just let them lick, and eventually they will take their swab or pacifier. Another way they could respond is not respond at all, and at this point, this baby just needs to rest, and that's what we're going to do. He'll have an opportunity at his next feeding. As you mature, you begin to associate hunger with eating. You wake up before feedings, active, alert, and waiting. Finally, when you are allowed to nurse or bottle, it is all very comforting, all very familiar, on your side, sucking and swallowing. Let's take a quick look at the results of the milk drop study. The most important columns are 3 and 5, which shows average length of stay. For example, the 24-week control infants had an average length of stay of 135 days, while the intervention infants had an average length of stay of 90 days, a 45-day difference. 9 out of the 10 intervention groups had a shorter length of stay, the most significant seen in the smallest and most fragile of infants. Our NICU saved over $663,000 on these 99 infants. This little guy was so interesting. He could only have a few drops of milk, but he enjoyed every one of them, as well as spending time with us. And as you will see, he definitely had a mind of his own. I am 26 weeks old, and I am ready for my milk drops. My cares are all done. I'm on my side. My hands are by my face. My mama's scent cloth is by my face. I am ready. The nurse just gave me a drop of milk. She's getting the swab ready. I opened my mouth, but she wasn't ready. So I'm just going to suck on my ET tube. And I'm okay with that. So thank you anyhow, but I'm just going to keep sucking. This video is a beautiful little girl who always loved her milk drops. I give her a drop of milk and offer her the pacifier by stroking her lips. It may be tempting to insert that pacifier, but be patient. Give them time. Let them accept and enjoy. I bring her hands back to her face and help her stay tucked. As I hold her, I gently talk to her. Every sense is engaged, wiring and making connections. Same little girl, a little more active now. I give her a drop of milk and offer her the pacifier. As she accepts the pacifier, she calms down, but remains alert. She now sweetly brings her own hands to her face as she sucks. Can you see how she is relaxing? Even her breathing is slowing down. Same little girl, now 34 weeks, ready and waiting. I give her a drop of milk and offer the pacifier. There is no hesitation as she pretty aggressively roots. This is so great to see. As she accepts the pacifier and starts to suck, she again brings her hands to her face and calms down. This is all very comforting, all very familiar. As you can see, our job is important long term to these families and infants. When we send our babies home, we are so excited for them. We assume everything is going well. First birthdays, the inappropriate shoveling in of the spaghetti, holidays, and teenage get togethers. As I have spoken about the milk drop study, nurses who are parents of preemies who are now adults want to tell me about their children, how hard it is to celebrate, the daily struggle to eat, the sadness of watching your child stare at the food, and the isolation felt. They tear up as they tell me how these aversions have followed their children into adulthood, and maybe, just maybe, milk drops could have helped their children too. Since I spoke at the Small Baby course in 2021 here with Kathy, so much has happened. Our research was presented at the NAN Research Summit. After that, we were offered a fellowship from NAN and Reckitt Mead Johnson with research mentors from Stanford, Cincinnati, and Omaha University. Dr. Rosemary Whitetrout from Children's Wisconsin Research Institute has now accepted the Milk Drop Project, and Dr. Tao Griffiths from Loyola University in Chicago will be the lead researcher. A pilot study will soon begin to clarify the protocol and feasibility of the project, with a plan to collaborate for a larger, more robust study. And finally, our article has recently been accepted for publication by the Journal of Neonatal Nursing. We are so grateful to all the researchers who have listened and were willing to walk this journey with us. So as I close, I want to leave on a really positive note, and I want you to know what can and did happen in our NICU. This little girl was born at our hospital, and her mother wanted us to share her story. Parker was born at 23 weeks. On day of life 3, milk drops were started. At 28 weeks, after 3 rounds of medication to close her PDA, it was ligated. At 35 weeks, she was transferred to a level 4 NICU for her persistent severe chronic lung disease. Her mother, though, requested milk drops be continued, which this NICU did do. At 52 weeks, while still on a RAM CPAP of +6, Parker was offered her first bottle. At 54 weeks, on a RAM CPAP of +4, she had progressed just 2 weeks later to demand feedings. Everyone was amazed. At 56 weeks, she went home on nasal cannula, full bottle feeding, and at 58 weeks, speech signed off that she was doing great. So, however, just 18 weeks later, at 76 weeks, our little girl came down with viral pneumonia. Initially intubated in the PICU, she was transferred for ECMO to allow her lungs to heal and also to let the virus run its course. But just 4 weeks later, at 80 weeks, she's back home, relaxing in her mom's boppy, holding her own bottle with her feet. Such a great family and such a great story. So here is Parker today, a tough little 4-year-old, showing off her nails, eating nuggets and fries, enjoying life exactly as it should be. So if you have any questions or want more information for your NICU, please feel free to email me at the address below. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb, for recording that ahead of time. I know that you were worried you wouldn't have a voice today, but I know you do. So I know that you're ready to answer all the questions that are here. And for those of you who are popping in and out, yeah, people are just saying amazing work. This is really cool. I even saw a message from Aisha. She said that she's done this before in practice and it's just such a rewarding experience. I don't know if you at your hospital, Aisha, have a full protocol or if it's just something that you've done. But anyways, just watching those videos, it's really heartwarming. And I think just such a positive experience. And I think that's really what you were trying to describe, right? That little missing piece in that puzzle of all the other things we're doing, but what can we do to really just do something simple to provide that positive oral experience? So let me run through a couple of the questions. And then if people want to be unmuted, just go ahead and raise your hand. We can call on you. And definitely if you are in a place where you can bring your self on video, that's always even more fun. So people are asking, there's Aisha. Did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say that it was just something that I did. When my unit had started doing more oral care, it felt very systematic, very clinical. You took a swab and you just put it in their mouth and you did like this and that was it. Yeah. And the babies never looked that was nice. They always kind of made a face and their hand would go up. And I thought, that can't be nice. And so then I started trying to do it a little bit more gently by just taking the swab and touching their lip to see if they would open their mouth. And some babies would actually suck on the swab, like you were saying. Some would say no and their mouth would close. But it became hard because you were told that you have to do oral care. You have to do oral care every so number of hours. I saw somebody had posted in the chat too, like that sort of like almost that line, like, do we force oral care on them, or do we make oral care more about still being something that's enjoyed if you're using mom's milk or anything really?
That is a really good question. Barb, what's your comment on that? Like, what's the line and where are the roles for these two different practices?
Right. We did do a survey of NICU nurses, a NAN survey, and it turns out NICU nurses, we don't know the difference between oral care and milk drops. We kind of think they're the same thing, but in reality, it's not. Oral care is completely separate. It's something we have to do. We have to clean their mouth, and really the best thing to do is to, if you can, have colostrum or breast milk and use that for oral care also. But I don't know if you remember in the scenario that the baby, all cares are done. We've done everything. We've done oral care, we've changed their diaper, and now we've tucked them in on their side. And now it's time to enjoy and be social with them. And so milk drops is almost like going out to eat with them. And oral care is like getting ready to go out. It's like, you got to get all this stuff done. And then we just tuck them in and they're all relaxed. And then, like I said, we give them that drop of milk and we're touching them. And milk drops gives us permission to stay. Usually, as when I first came back to NICU, I was told, you get in and you get out. That baby needs to rest. And man, you did everything you could as fast as you could and let that baby alone. But what we have found out from that also is that some of these babies socially have issues long term. And so the beauty of this is milk drops gives us permission to stay, touch the baby, talk to them, and let them enjoy the milk. And to be honest with you, oral care is a little on the invasive side. They don't have a choice. Yeah. We are doing it to them, which we have to. These are things we have to do. But if we end on a positive note and that's what they're going to remember. They will remember that enjoyable moment and time with you, and that's what they remember when they're waking up before the next set of cares. They're ready for you. This is what they want. So anyhow, does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
But I think to your point, Aisha, it's also like, why does oral care have to feel such like a torture? Like, anything that I think the things you've shared, Barb, of like how you approach the baby, I feel like we could try to use some of those like techniques of the, accepting and less forcing, and just incorporate maybe some of those kind of principles. But I totally get it. Like, there are going to be kids who are just like, no. Right. And you're like, okay, just like they don't want to give us their veins sometimes, right? Like, we have to just do it. But I think that's a really good distinction that you made, Barb. Like, this is almost like dessert. And I love that idea of it's our permission to stay. I think that's really important, because I think you're right. We have gotten so task oriented and, fast paced and short staffed and all of those pieces. And to be able to have this simple intervention, and how long would you say that interaction lasts? Is it, like on average, like people will say, I'm so busy, like, how can I do this?
Right. It depends on the baby and depends how they respond. If I'm busy and I am still at the bedside, if I'm busy, I still feel even if they get one drop of milk, even if I touch them and give them one drop of milk and they suck for it's still positive. We want to end positive. And I know that's not always easy, because sometimes you have 3 feedings all at 9 o'clock. So what do you do? So I try to get all my milk drop syringes prepared early so that it's not an excuse. I don't have an excuse for not giving them. So
that's great.
But
I believe in the power of one, right? So one drop even is good and enough. Let me answer just a couple of these questions really quick, because I think that will help answer maybe some other questions. So you said you get the milk ready. So can you talk about what milk you're using and whether or not you only use mom's milk? Do you ever use formula? What kind of milk do you use?
Okay. Our protocol for our babies it's that we will use breast milk or donor milk up to the age of 34 weeks. Hopefully I pull the milk drops out of the milk before it's fortified. I prefer to give straight breast milk. Although if I don't have that, I will give fortified milk. And we do give milk drops until the baby's taking full oral feeds. We give milk drops only with full gavage feedings, because they're not getting anything orally with full gavage feedings. Now, if they are breastfeeding and then they only take a partial feeding, after 34, 35 weeks, then that's that oral experience. That was the positive oral experience. Or if they bottled and then we gavage the rest, we don't give milk drops, because again, they've had that oral experience. But some babies also have milk allergies, protein allergies, and so we do use formula if that's what they have. And so it's all been a good experience for these babies. It doesn't matter and the doctors are just they're just all on board, and the parents are all on board. If their baby happens to have to be NPO, that's one of their first questions is, okay, when are these milk drops starting? And so that's pretty sweet. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. So just some technical, should drops be the freshest milk, or would you use old colostrum? Like frozen colostrum? Like, would you have a preference?
I guess I would use the freshest milk just because it has the most immune capabilities. But I would use either. Yeah.
Do you give milk drops when the babies are NPO?
Again, that depends on the doctor, and it kind of depends on why the baby's NPO. If we have some neck issues, they probably will not give those. But if a baby's questionable sepsis, they probably will continue them. So
Okay.
up to the doctor. Yeah.
So someone was making the comment, I'd love to do PO feedings and attempts while babies are on CPAP, especially the older ones that are really exhibiting those strong feeding cues, but they don't allow that in their NICU. So she's asking, she or he, sorry, in whether or not there's any literature to share on POing babies with CPAP, which is, I think, is a separate question. So if anybody has any of those literature at their hand, I feel like there is some literature out there about this practice, but what do you recommend as far as milk drops when babies are on CPAP? Is that something that you do if they can't do PO? Would this be a way to bridge that?
We do not do it on CPAP. We do give milk drops. We give
You do
milk
milk drops. Okay.
But yeah, we do milk drops from day of life 3, all babies. And so it's a standard of care in our NICU. But CPAP, we don't nipple, we don't bottle. But on Vapotherm or high flow nasal cannula, we do. And it probably depends on the flow, how high the flow is, if they will allow that. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Looks like Lisa, you have your hand raised. Do you want to come on camera or unmute? Feel free.
Yeah. Hi, I'm trying. Am I there?
Hey, Lisa. Yep.
Okay. Hey. So we have done I guess a variant. We really didn't know we were doing milk drops, but we do a gentle oral care. We have a protocol, a mini protocol that we did on how you approach that. And then after the baby is completed, we're using the I forget what brand it is, but it's the Snuggle-Roo. So they're all kind of contained. You get them in their little posture. And we had a baby who was so successful, even when she was intubated. And I didn't catch this. I was traveling for the beginning part, so I apologize. But we have our parents do it. So we teach our parents to do it, and they will put either on our little swabs or with a syringe. And we had a baby she was born at 23 weeks, and while she was still intubated, she became so proficient at doing it that we're kind of questioning, wow, like we're all done that syringe of milk, and her feeding is only 9 mils. Should we be feeding her on top of that? Because we're giving her double her, so we started, being much more quantitative. And we had a couple of babies where they milk dropped as much milk as they wanted, and then we topped them off with the remainder because they were so proficient. And Rejoice was the baby, that's her first name, and she went home kind of like your baby did, and ended up going home bottle and breastfeeding, and did very, very successful. So it's definitely a very, very potent tool, and we used it again. I did not catch whether or not you're recruiting and letting parents assist you with that, but we would do all their care and then leave the parents at the bedside to kind of do it while we kind of putted around the room then and completed that nurse tasky stuff that you had to do. So again, we had great success.
That's amazing. That is so. Lisa, can I get your email so we can talk, because there's some collaboration here I think we can do, because I agree some of these babies may even take their whole feeding. The thing about it is I think the difference between them taking a whole feeding like through this is that we're in control. When a baby sucks on a bottle, they get a bolus, and all of a sudden they don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
We are actually monitoring them. We are assessing them. We are pacing them. And so they are complete control. It's completely positive oral experience for them. And Correct. It's a developmental stepping stone to oral feeding.
Yep.
So I do, yes.
Yeah. So and because we used the parents, it really kind of incorporates that family integrated care more, where the parents, like when you walk into a room and like we've had parents I do this to, and they're just like, oh, well, thank you. Because I'll say to them, oh no, you're going to tell me what to do because you know her. Like I just walked in here. If you had any impression that I know your baby better than you do, we're going to turn that on its head because you know your baby better than I do. And kind of getting away from the power that the healthcare provider at the bedside versus the parent does for us it's been very, very potent. So we've changed some of our scripting that we're coaching our more junior nurses to use. And it's been very, very powerful. So
I think it also teaches, it's showing the parents, just like you said, they're learning their cues. By the time that baby bottles or nurses, they understand everything about cues. And it's not quite the stress that, all of a sudden they're all gavage, and all of a sudden we're going to start bottling. And now we've got this tension, like, okay, what are we going to do? And so I think it's all stepping stones. So Lisa, you guys have done wonderful. We do somewhat, not as much as I think you guys do, but that is very impressive. Maybe you should be giving this. I'm thinking it. That's awesome.
No, but thank you.
Yes.
There's a couple questions, Barbara, about the type of syringe you use and that little kind of cute tip. Is that something your hospital purchases? Is that something you guys have invented? Is that just a standard product?
That was several years ago, and that product is no longer available. I know, like most hospitals probably have the infant system, and they do have like a little adapter that is almost like a little straw that you can hook onto your syringes. And then there's another one that's like a little funnel. I prefer the straw just because you have a little bit more control. You can see exactly how many drops you're giving versus the little funnel. It's hard to see. It's very hard to see.
Great.
But no.
And then do you use a low absorbent swab with that? Sorry to interrupt.
We do, but we also have a little bit larger swab. I kind of like the larger swab because I can get more milk onto it, and they can actually suck the milk off of that swab. But we have both. So I kind of use the low absorb for more like the oral care. So.
Yeah. People are asking about for your for the PO feeding on high flow. What's your upper limit of flow for in your hospital's policy?
I would say two.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people are saying 2.
Yeah.
I think it depends on how old the baby is too, and all of that. Jackie is asking scanning process for breast milk. So how do you document, and do you use your same sign out?
Yeah, we would just, ours is on our feeding Epic flow sheet. And so, yes, we would just scan both the feeding and the milk drops.
Awesome. Parents, Annette is saying, where were you, Annette? Oh my gosh, I lost it. Where'd it go, Annette? Sorry. Oh, Pamela, this is a good one while I find the other comment. I'm curious about how this might be helpful for babies with HIE who get cooled and may even end up on ECMO. I'm seeing a large number of babies with long-term feeding issues and aversions related to their brain injury or obviously for instrumentation. So any opinions about that, or have you had discussions in your unit yet around cooling or ECMO kids?
Well, we have used this on like PPHN babies. We will, after the 72 hours, our doctors kind of implemented that 3-day rule before starting milk drops. And I think, I guess I never really asked them why they do that, but I think it really has to do with that recovery period and the cooling period that gives them that cushion in there. But I did have a full-term baby, a PPHN baby, that he was on fentanyl drips, he was on dopamine, he was on everything. And he was just every 3 hours, he is needing more medication, more sedation. And we were giving him, kind of topping him off a little bit with more fentanyl. And I offered him milk drops, and he became a different baby. He would sleep 3 hours. We did not give fentanyl. We did not give above his drip again. The nurse that followed me just goes, "What happened? Like, this is crazy." And
Wow.
I go, "Yeah." And I think the most beautiful part of it was the mother came over to the bedside, and she'd been over there pumping and just tons of milk. But, this was the only thing she could do. And when I brought her over and showed him sucking and swallowing, and I mean, he's intubated and completely, and she's just, "Oh my God, keep it up, keep it up." She just was so amazed by that. And again, it's just heartwarming. These parents are so out of control that this is something that they are actually giving and actually doing for their babies. So it's a wonderful tool. And also, I think it also allows those babies who would not be eating for days a step up to going home. Because again, we've done this on multiple babies, and within 2-3 days of coming off CPAP or coming off respiratory support, they are full feeding. And so I think we have not done a study on how fast this or how it affects, and but I feel it does, because these babies that do so well after their support is done.
Yeah. I would imagine that if you went back to your cohort, that you could compare days to total feeds for the intubated population. I mean, I don't know if there'll be enough for the statistical power, but certainly you could see just descriptively, you could say, based on this kind of single site, we hypothesize it could. And then, like you mentioned, to us, some of the other sites, over 1,100. So Barb has done this presentation. You saw the list of places that she's done it. 1,100 different people have contacted her to either partner, to ask for more information, to implement this in their hospital. And so, she's really created quite a movement around this idea that this is separate from a feeding. This is separate from the oral care we have to do, like you described earlier. This is truly an oral enjoyment experience for babies who are getting either full, NPO or extremely low volume enteral feed through a tube. This is really meant to give oral enjoyment. And it's really meant to be that neurosensory experience, that positive interaction. And I think also just that moment for us, like you said in the beginning, to slow down and to be present and to be more mindful, with that baby. So I think I think we've talked a lot about oral feeds and other babies where obviously, feeding is always such a huge issue for us. But you've really defined this as a separate care practice. It's the icing on the cake, or like you said, the dessert of the meal.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's see there. So does your protocol limit how much total volume you give during the drops? So how do you terminate this experience? Is it after 10 drops, after 10 mils? Like, how do you stop it? Especially in these babies who are receiving all gavage feeds, they're not really ready for feedings. How do you limit that? And what's the limits?
Our protocol does have limits on gestational ages. Although I do, just like you said, some of these babies would definitely take more. And
Yeah.
I don't know, they might get more sometimes. I don't know how that happens, but they might. But I don't know. But we do have limits just to give us a baseline on what would be expected or the most you would want to at least start with.
Okay, great. And I know you're willing to share your protocols too when people reach out.
Yes.
Pamela Davis, you have your hand up, and Lisa, I don't know if that was from earlier, or if you have a new question. So Pamela, if you're available.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a question. I just want to say to Barb that I'm so excited by this talk because the babies that I see in high risk, especially those that have been cooled and, have a really noxious start. I think sometimes, even though we have a pretty healthy feeding protocol it's Q-based for the preemies and our term infants. And we do use different nipples, and our OT is really invested in their neurodevelopment. I think the drop protocol added into that would really be wonderful for both groups of patients, because it just really breaks my heart to send them home with a bridle tube and not having the support they have in the NICU. Sometimes I feel like there's a push to rush the babies out. And I know why that is, there's insurance issues and whatnot, but I really like the idea of giving them other positive ways for their brains to develop. The brains are so resilient and they can create these other pathways, right, to get beyond what happened in the beginning. But just thank you so much for this talk, because it's really made me like there's another thing we can do that might help these babies. So it's really great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Pamela. There's some questions about other populations. So obviously, Barb, we're also excited about this, that we want you to have already studied ECMO babies, cooling babies, cardiac babies, NAS babies. What are you doing? Why have you not done all of these babies so that we all know and we can convince all of our doctors tomorrow to start, or later today? I know in the email, we said that, we had said some of the other areas that people are hypothesizing are really going to be helpful. Have you had even just in your hospital experience with the NAS babies, and where does that fit? Because they tend to eat orally. So how do you kind of balance this idea of the icing on top for them?
Well, we really don't. Right. If a baby's bottling, any kind of oral bottling, we wouldn't give milk drops. So like I said, it's totally if they're gavage fed so that they get something. I agree. I think this belongs to every population, and it definitely can't hurt them. And, I've read so many articles, and I think I was talking to Kathy about this neonatologist he's a pediatric neurologist, and he talks about deprivation and dysphagia and the issue that because we're depriving these children of these oral experiences that they've had prior to being born, now it's just ultimately their neural connections are causing some of this, is that they are dysphagia. And then another neonatologist, and I love him, he talks repetition is the mother of skill. And he talks about practicing and learning and enjoyment. And these are really terms that we haven't talked about. Neonatology does not talk about oral enjoyment. And we don't talk about practicing. We just kind of talk, and we don't talk about learning. We don't talk about that. But these researchers and these neurologists are saying that is what is happening. Your brain is learning. And from what we're practicing, whether it's good or bad, that is what is happening as your brain is learning. Right. And so it just strikes me.
Neuropromotion. Ooh, Jackie.
Oh my God.
That's it, Barb. That's the word, right? Neuropromotion. I mean, it's, it's that what fires together wires together, right? And we create those habits so early. I love it.
Right.
I love it. I love it. Let's see if there's anybody else have their hand up that I've missed. Feel free to unmute. There was another question in here. I think again, just it really is, back Jana was asking, what about withdrawal, like doing this instead of offering sweeties? I think it's plenty of people do use colostrum as like an oral enjoyment or an oral thing. But again, I think your focus was really these babies who are not yet getting any oral experiences and having lots of negative oral experiences, and a way to kind of offset that. Like I loved how you described this being that last thing that they remember as they kind of go into their rest period, especially for these babies who have so many issues and so many procedures and so many hurtful and negative experiences, to leave them with that, right? To wash that away, that stress for just this few moments. I think that's really the difference of what you've created.
And I don't know if you're that little one, he, most of them just, they're done. And he is socializing with us. He is active and socializing. And that part I just love, because again, they're little humans. This humanizes them and makes us connect with them. And that part I just love. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Anne was asking for your 3-day wait. What was the rationale for that? And is that especially because you do this on your most extremely small babies? Or talk about, why the 3 days and how you came to that in your group?
Our doctors requested that 3-day hold, and I probably should have pinned them down why they felt that way, but I personally would say most of these infants, they want a recovery period before we start, because most of these babies have been stressed from birth, and even like the cooling babies, all of these babies have had issues from the get-go. And so I think that's probably their rationale, and we can still give oral care with breast milk, and I would encourage that, because again, that's still, it's invasive to a point, but it's still their mother. So that is something they're missing. So I would definitely do that those 3 days for sure.
Excellent. I think, you start somewhere, right? And I think when you're implementing change in your units, sometimes there are fights to fight, and there are sometimes just agreements to be made, and you just to get started, right? If you decided to die on that hill and why are we waiting? We're still doing oral care, and why can't I just do these drops, right? Like you may have not been able to progress. And so inside our team, right, we just have to acknowledge that sometimes we have to just start somewhere. It's better than not doing it. Even if you'd had to wait a week, right, on these little 23 weekers, even starting a week later, right, you would have still been making an impact. So I think that, maybe it was just kind of like, that's that IVH risk. That's, just like one less variable that they wanted to throw in the mix for their bleeds. Like, who knows, right, what it was. But I think it's a nice example of just get started, start somewhere, and you can always go back and examine that policy or not, right? But I think just getting started was important, and we definitely applaud you on that. So Anne, sorry, no real rationale, just it was the compromise that she had to do, I guess. Jackie's saying, yeah, Vaughn's emphasis that all care is brain care. This is one more thing we could add. Absolutely. So Jackie's asking about your early trophic feeds. So in that first 72 hours for your smallest babies, are you starting any trophic feeds, or is that part of your policy? Do you remember?
Well, the doctors will order trophic feeds as more like kibosh feedings. So this is completely different from that. So yeah, I mean, they do trophic feeds.
Do they start them in the first 72? Do you remember?
That has happened. I've seen that happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the protocol sometimes changes as the babies tolerate. Yeah.
And then of course we know that, many places are starting to feed babies on cooling now. So, especially the more mild babies. So, it could be incorporated in those situations where they've already deemed enteral feeds okay. Or like you said, that maybe they're just beginning to get some trophic minimal feeds. And this could be one thing we could add in, that little bit of milk drops for those cooling babies in places that are doing the minimal enteral feeds for these babies. But, many of them are so vigorous, they're taking that minimal, feed by mouth. If they aren't, and that's your protocol, maybe this is something to implement in that population if your hospital's already going there. I think we're at the top of the hour, Barb. I can't believe it. It went so fast. Not
great.
surprising, because I knew people would be very excited about this topic. And again, just congratulations on A, the work, and B, doing the work to get it published, which we all know is no easy feat. And just what a powerful tool your publication will be for people who are ready to take this to the next level, who are interested in exploring and studying some of those hypotheses that you shared with us that we put out in the email. So could this be the missing link for many of these situations that we see, these long-term outcomes? So people are asking how they can get in touch with you. So I put your email in the chat. Sorry, you'll be getting another 100 emails today. And then also they're asking, and they can reach out to you, I guess, to get a copy of your presentation, to invite you to come speak, to keep them up to date, because I know you have a mailing list that you send out every once in a while with updates on research projects you're working on, progress on your projects, and then of course the publication, which is in press, which we're just not sure when it will hit the internet, but it will be coming. And let's see what else. Protocol, algorithms, your policy, your slides, they're so excited. They want it all. So I'll leave it with you to either send to us what we can share, and we'll share on your behalf if people reach out to us, or we'll just post your email address. And sorry, you'll get 100 more emails.
It's awesome. I want it to be a huge wave. I want every NICU to do this. It needs to. So, but thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much. I surely appreciate your questions and your excitement. I'm really happy. Thank you.
Yeah. And does your hospital allow for people to, does your publication include your protocol in it? And has your hospital allowed others to copy it? What has been your standing answer for that in the past?
I mean, I do share our standard of care. I do share the protocol.
Okay.
I take off our hospital's name, but this would be an example of what you could use.
Okay.
And yeah, they don't mind that I share. I think as long as their name isn't on it. Yeah. And but yeah, they surely don't mind that I share the article. They don't.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll keep everybody up to date when you have the actual, publication date and location. We'll put that out again. And then whatever you want to give us permission to share, we can post up in places on our website so people can get access to that as well. But
thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So thanks. I know you were sick, and thanks.
No, it's great.
Thanks for being with us.
I'm glad it all worked out. So anyhow, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being here. And if you are interested in getting the Neuro NICU exam done, so there's a Neuro NICU certification. Next Friday, we're having an information session, February 3rd, same time, 8 a.m., about our study group that we're starting in February. So it'll run February and March. Some of you have taken the exam. Some of you have come to the study group. You are all welcome to come. We love past students to the study group. New students, I think already we have 30 new students who are studying for the exam. So that's exciting. And anyways, just wanted to remind you that that's coming next Friday. You'll be getting emails about that if you're on our email list. And if you're keen to take your neuro NICU certification, which I recommend, definitely check out our course that's coming out soon. And you will, like I said, info session next Friday if you want to learn more. And we'll be starting the classes on the 17th of February. So you have time to get going. So great chat. Thanks everybody for being here. Link for next Friday. Yes, I do have that. I'll pop that up for you in 1 second in the chat. But absolutely. Let me pull that up. Just take me a second, unless Jen, you're faster than me. She might be. We're using a new platform for next Friday, so I have to. There is the registration link. So feel free to hop on that one, and we'll be with you there next week. All right, everybody. Thank you, Barbara. Go get some rest, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Kat.
Bye. Bye, Lisa. Thanks.